Pontiac Fiero. You got it, Pontiac.
Hi, thanks for checking out this segment of my 3800 Fiero build video. In this video we're going to be taking FieroRog's bracket kit and installing it onto the engine. As you'll note, the brackets match up perfectly with the holes designated for the brackets. I'll also be swapping out the water pump in this video as well, since it's easier to take care of it now while it's easy to do than to wait and have to do it later in the car and it'd be a huge pain. You'll also see why it was smart of me to change the water pump now rather than wait. After removing the water pump, I discovered sludge that had built up from the engine sitting for a few years. If you're using a salvage yard engine, it is best to replace what you can now and give the engine a good look over before installing it, because nothing is more frustrating than putting a dead engine in your car. My salvage yard engine was also missing a few pulleys and brackets, so I took a few extra minutes in this video to go through the installs of each of those in case someone had a similar situation. I'll provide as many part numbers and links as I can in the description field below. If you're looking to start your 3800 swap in the foreseeable future, I suggest contacting FieroRog and ordering your brackets now so they'll be on hand when you're ready to start, because if you're like me, you're not going to want to have to wait for the mail. A link to his PFF thread is in the description below, or you can email him directly at his email address right here. Check out my video, and I hope you find it useful. Thanks. Now in this segment, we're going to go through the conversion process of the belt system on the supercharged 3800. This particular engine is a 99 Buick Regal GS. I know that it's the same as the GTP, but I know that there are some differences between the motors. I'm not exactly sure what ones are the same and what ones are different. If I find the information, I'll post it down below so you can look through it. But I do know the GTP and the Regal are the same. When you're looking for a 3800 engine, they're not all the same. I mean, the block and the supercharger are pretty much the same, but the brackets and some of the setup of the accessories are a little different. And you need a particular setup in order to make it fit in the Fiero better. Some of those brackets include like the coil packs, the ones that are angled downward like this, are the brackets that we need because it has the pulley setup, which I don't have the pulleys on yet. But you need this bracket here. The other setup that I've seen is the coil packs go straight across. That's a different pulley bracket, which goes out too far and will interfere with the firewall on the Fiero. So you want the 3800s that have the angled coil packs. And with the coil packs, they actually stick out too far, which will also interfere with the firewall on the Fiero. So we actually have to relocate these. In my case, I have a battery relocation kit that allows me to use the open space in that area. I'm actually going to mount my battery or my coil packs in the battery tray area. That being said, the bracket actually needs to be cut. On the back here is a dog bone bracket. We actually don't need that to clean up the engine bay, and to get rid of that, you actually need to cut that bracket off because we don't need that dog bone bracket. And this is what one looks like with the dog bone bracket cut off. So you have the 10-center pulley bracket here, another one comes out through here, and then the dog bones here. So that's one thing you have to do is get this bracket. The other one is the oil filter adapter. You want the one that sticks out a bit farther like this. It helps clear the cradle. Not all of them are set up this way, so you want the filter and the coil pack slash dog bone bracket. They're angled like this. As I go through the engine swap process, I'll try and relay differences between the motors, the best that I know, and what you need to look for and what you need to do. So we'll dive in a little bit more, and we'll start swapping out some brackets that we need to get the belt system set up the way we want it. In my case, I'm going to replace the water pump in it. Since the engine's out, it's more convenient. I would suggest doing that if possible. Go ahead, it's usually about 35 bucks for a water pump, so I'd suggest doing it. So this is my setup here. I'm missing a couple pulleys, which is okay. I've ordered them, and I will try and get this set up, and let's get started. As a quick reference, this is the top end of my 99 Regal GS supercharged engine. This is kind of in view of what it would look like in the Fiero, with the belt system on this side, your intake on the driver's side. As you can see with the valve cover, we're going to have to move the valve covers. We're going to have to switch the positions of them so we can have the oil cap on this side. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have some custom fuel rails made. In the Fiero, the fuel system comes out, the fuel lines come out right about here. The 3800, the fuel rails come out here, which means you have to run them out to the trunk and back and over. And to make it look a little cleaner and to use hoses that are better rated, I'm going to have a custom fuel rail made where they actually come out where they need to be to better match the Fiero setup and to look a little cleaner on the supercharger. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to remove some of these unnecessary brackets. These right here we don't really need. I'm not going to remove these until I put the engine on the transmission, because I want to be able to use these to hoist the engine up. And once it's mounted on the transmission, I'll go ahead and take these off. Here we have a closer view of the engine setup that we have. As I mentioned, these are the pulley brackets we want that come on the coil pack. I'm going to put a tensioner pulley here, idle pulley here. Tensioner will go here. Those are two that I'm missing. I'm also missing an AC condenser, which I will put on. The alternator bracket will come down here. This will be more towards the trunk. And then we're going to remove some of the unnecessary brackets and pulleys that we don't really need. I'm also going to do a 3.4 pulley. You can check that in one of my other videos on the 3.4 pulley conversion, as well as doing the spark plugs for that pulley setup. But for now, we're going to work on getting our belt system set up using the FieroRog brackets. So let's get to it. Alright, something that's not necessary, but I would suggest if you're doing a motor swap, I'm going to go ahead and remove the water pump and swap that out new, so I don't have to worry about that later. Trying to do that while it's in the car if it ever fails. So I'm just going to replace this now while it's easy and convenient. I'm not going to spend too much time on explaining it because it's pretty straightforward. Just got some 10mm and a 13mm bolt, and I believe these are 8mm. To get the pulley off, you have to switch that over. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Alright, when I'm ready, I'm going to paint this up, make it look nice, so add the engine's beauty. Let's keep going. I tried wrenching off this last bolt by hand, which I was kind of thinking that I may not have the clearance with this pulley in the way. I was gonna hope. I'm not very familiar with this engine just yet, so I'm gonna have to pull the pulley. And this is a T50 Taurus. There we go. And yeah, wow. Definitely a good thing that I decided to pull this. When you buy a used engine, you never know what the condition of it is. As you can see, wow, yeah, that's gonna take a little bit. So I'm gonna have to clean this up before I decide to install the new pulley. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that, and then we'll get back on track. I decided to take the rare opportunity to pull this out while the weather is nice, and I have the opportunity to work on it before it's mounted to the transmission. It gets too heavy to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and start pulling off the unnecessary accessories, and we'll start building this up. First up, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Right now it's a 13mm socket, and we'll start pulling it off. And then there's another bolt down here. Alright, putting the water pump back on. Got my idler pulley on. I'm ready to start putting on some of FieroRog's brackets. So I'm going to start with the alternator, which goes right in here. It's going to be a low mount alternator. It's going to utilize a couple bolt holes in this area. Let me show you what they are. Alright, this is the area we're going to mount the low mount alternator bracket. We're going to utilize this bolt hole, this bolt hole, this bolt hole, and this one. So again, it'll be this one, this one, this one, and this one. This is the only one that we're really not going to use. And FieroRog does provide all the bolts needed. Two of these are going to be a 13mm, and then the bigger ones you'll get with your kit are going to be 15mm. So let's go ahead and bracket this thing up. Alright, this is the FieroRog low mount alternator bracket that we're going to mock up. It's basically going to fit on just like that. And all the holes match up perfect, so no issues. We'll go ahead and start bolting this up. We'll set this one in to help hold it in place for the moment, but this is actually going to go through the alternator as well. Alright, now we're going to cinch them down with the 13 millimeter. Now we're going to move on to the 15 millimeter. Now just putting this on to show and to make sure it's lined up. We're going to take this off and put the alternator on. Alright, so anyone wanting to know what alternator do you use for the 3800, whether it be Fiero or the 3800, this is actually the alternator for a 3800. So this is what you're going to use. This is what the bracket's set up for. If it works for Fiero or not, I'm not sure, but I'm going with the 3800 alternator because that's how it's newer, has higher output, so mine as well. If you're wanting to know what bolt to use for this, there are two long ones that come with FieroRog's kit. One's a 110 millimeter and the other one's an 80 millimeter. You want the 80 millimeter to go in here. This one's actually going to go for the Ford Taurus tensioner pulley that we'll get to in a little bit. So just to clarify, this is the one that you need, the shorter of the longer ones. So let's get this on. Right, so we're going to set it on like so. Alright, so for the bolts here, we're actually going to use the alternator bolts that actually come with the original alternator. Alright, the FieroRog kit comes with some nuts. You're supposed to reuse the bolts that came with your original alternator. So we're going to go ahead and stick that through and then tighten up the nut on the back. The nut is a 15 millimeter and the bolt is a 13 millimeter. Alright, now we'll do the other side and then we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to move on to the dog bone bracket here. We're actually going to use this bracket here, and we're also going to use a tensioner from a 1995 Ford Taurus. You can get a gauge spec number K060815 as a part number, or K06810 for a shorter one. But I went with the 815, so we're going to install that with the kit. Alright, now we're going to cinch them down with a 15 millimeter. Alright, your kit may come with or without the dog bone already kind of set in there. But if it is and it's loose, we're just going to cinch that down with a 13 millimeter wrench and socket. Alright, so now that we got the dog bone tensioner bracket mounted up, we're going to go ahead and start mounting our tensioner pulley. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is a tensioner pulley from a 3.8 liter 1995 Ford Taurus. I have a link below for you to order yours. This is going to be held on with the longest bolt in FieroRog's kit. I'm also going to use one of his spacers because this bolt is just slightly too long. But I also want you to make a note that it does have a nub on the back. This nub lines up with the hole here to keep it in its proper position. So we'll go ahead and mount this up. So now we're going to cinch it down with a 17mm socket. Alright, there we have it. We are good to go. Ready to move on to the next step. Alright, in my case, maybe in yours too, I have some pulleys missing from mine. If you end up getting a 3800 engine from a Bonneville, Park Avenue, something that has a slightly different coil pack bracket, you might be doing the same thing, hunting down pulleys and stuff. I'm going to go ahead and put my pulleys on. I end up ordering this from Rock Auto, so we'll go ahead and put this on. It does have some notches on the back to help line it up, and it's going to be downward facing. Go ahead and set that in, and that's how it's going to go. Alright, now that we got this pulley on, we're going to move on to the final one, which mounts here. I didn't have this one, so I had to order this one as well. I got it from Rock Auto. It is a Dayton idler pulley, part number 89009. And I also do not have the original bolts, so I had to make one with a bolt I had lying around and a large washer. So hopefully it'll work, and we'll mount it up. So stick that on. Go ahead and start tightening this down. Center it up the best we can. For me, it's going to be a 13mm socket. I believe if you have the actual nut or bolt, it's a T50 Torx, I think. That's good. There we have it. Now we gotta do is the AC compressor, and we'll belt this thing up. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and mount the AC compressor. If you have a salvage yard engine like I do, you may or may not have parts missing. In this case I do. I was missing the AC compressor bracket. This is what it looks like if you need one. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on now. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and install the AC compressor. I've seen varying information on what AC compressor to use, whether it be Fiero or the one for the 3800. I'm going with the 3800 AC compressor. So I've already got the brackets, there's no fabricating, it seems to be a straight shot. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll set it up. Alright, so we've got FieroRog's brackets on, all the belt accessories are on, so we're going to go ahead and put on our accessory belt. There's a couple options to go with. I'm going to go with the Gates KO60815 belt, link for it below, and we'll go ahead and belt this up. Alright, now we're going to use a 15mm wrench to loosen up the tensioner pulley so we can slide the belt on. Alright, so now we got the accessory belt on, ready to go. If you're going to use the stock supercharger, you can go ahead and belt up the supercharger pulley. I, however, am going to use a 3.4 pulley, so I'm going to be swapping this out. Check that out in my other video on changing the supercharger and spark plugs for a 3800. Thanks again for checking out my video on installing FieroRog's brackets for the Serpentine belt and accessory belt. Please check out my other videos on supercharger upgrade, lower intake manifold, as well as the fuel rail system. Also, please check out my upcoming video on using FieroRog's last bracket, which is the engine mount bracket. I will be mounting this to the engine cradle and setting the engine in. It's very exciting. So please like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube so you can see my exciting project on getting this into my Fiero. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.